Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. So another wave of Trump's tariffs policy is about to be unleashed. Not new rates as such, but the removal of the de minimis rule. This had previously exempted imports with a value of less than $800 from tariffs. So an American buying some clothes from overseas, for example, would not pay tariffs no matter where they came from. That's all changing now. It's chaotic for postal companies as well as small businesses. But just how is this going to affect the cost of living and jobs? But first, for daily news and politics, please click the subscribe button to stay notified. Right, so coming to the end of another month, so I guess it's time for Trump to unleash another wave of tariffs. The latest to come online is the removal of tariff exemptions for goods below $800 in value. It applies tariffs to goods which previously weren't liable at all. And due to Trump's escalation of tariffs in general, means some could suddenly be 50% more expensive. So it's a bit of a double whammy straight away. Only it's worse than that. Tariffs are actually quite complicated. See, we see the headline figure of the sort of tariffs Trump has applied to different countries, like 10% for the UK, for example, 20% for the EU. But these are just the baseline figures. Some products individually have lower or higher tariffs than the baseline. So if you're importing something, it's not enough to go, oh, yeah, it's $500 worth, slap the tariff on. It has to be categorized. Well, how much is the tariff? What is it? What's in the box? Not a problem for large-scale exporters who have staff specifically employed to deal with the paperwork. But for a small business owner supplying individual customers around the world, the paperwork that they will have and the postal company will have, that red tape can be a bit awkward for low-value items, especially when rules are changing. And that creates a short to medium and a long-term problem. The short-term problem is the difference between your order arriving a few hours before the deadline and a few hours after it is huge. If it arrives before, no tariffs. If it arrives after, literally just a few hours later on the ship, the paperwork gets extra scrutiny and tariffs are levied. That means more delays and above all, more cost. So quite a few postal companies, I think even including Britain's Royal Mail, have just decided this week they're not sending any packages to America, or at least not that would be covered by this, in order to avoid the uncertainty, because they don't know exactly when it would arrive. Some of them will begin after the deadline when they know tariffs will definitely apply to everything. But some companies don't have the systems to cope efficiently with the extra requirements for low value items. Remember, it can take just as long to fill the paperwork in for $1 million worth of goods as $50 worth of goods, right? But it's worth it for the $1 million, you know what I mean? And the BBC were reporting, for example, on a small British business owner who gets 30% of her sales from the USA for her wool. So it's like, not easily missed that market. But she just had to stop for now because she doesn't know what to tell her customers about the import costs. She cannot tell them what price they'll eventually be paying. Medium term, these companies will be able to better inform their customers, but due to the extra cost, will of course lose some of those customers. Then long term, trade will just flow away from the USA because it's too awkward, too expensive to deal with. Much like a lot of EU-based businesses just stopped supplying Britain completely. I had several people I used to order from, just they won't supply Britain, it's too awkward. Now, all this sounds like problems for the suppliers, which after all are foreign companies as far as the US government is concerned. The difficulty in exporting to America is no concern to the America First Brigade, right? Only, of course, the far greater impact will be felt in the US itself. First of all, importers of the affected low-value items now have to consider both the category of import and the extra costs. Some of these items could be 50% more expensive overnight. Has multiple impacts. First, American consumers buying cheaper clothes, for example, from abroad, now have to pay more for them. So why not just buy American? That's what Trump wants you to do. Well, maybe there are no American-made equivalents. But let's say you can get something similar made in America. There was a reason you were importing in the first place. Maybe it was cheaper. It certainly wasn't quicker to get it. So buying American in this case means paying more. Maybe you could justify the benefit to the economy, American companies, if there weren't a cost of living crisis, but there is. So Americans aren't going to be spending more money. It means their already stretched household budgets have to make more compromises, meaning some items they're currently buying don't get bought at all, including American items. But this new tariff rule doesn't just hit consumers buying foreign fashion, it hits American businesses as well. There are well over 30 million small businesses in the United States. A lot of them very likely import some products as part of their business. These have already been hit with the average tariffs increasing to about 7 times as much as it was at the start of the year. But many small businesses are likely to import small quantities of niche items from overseas as well, which could easily be under $800 a time. They're getting hit by this new tariff wave. It will mean having to pay much more for items which could be essential for their business. Passing the costs on to their customers may not be possible, so their business will be in jeopardy. This new tariff rule works like all tariffs. It costs jobs and raises inflation domestically. It's easy to see tariffs as a protectionist measure, which hurts foreign businesses and protects domestic ones. But if it were really like that in practice, you wouldn't have international agreements to lower tariffs. Individual governments would all be raising them to protect their own national interests. Doesn't even matter that most of the world isn't retaliating. So you might imagine the biggest danger of a tariff increase is the ensuing trade war, and that makes things a whole lot worse, certainly. But even one-sided tariffs hurt the domestic market if not applied carefully. And Trump is not a careful person. As a result of Trump's tariffs in general, there are now believed to be 13 million American jobs at risk. Trump says American manufacturers don't charge their customers tariffs, right? Or if you buy American, you're not paying the tariffs. That's not true. Those American businesses need to import things. It might be the finished product that they're selling on, but it could just be materials or equipment for their own manufacture. If you buy an American car, steel's not coming from America, right? But American-based businesses are paying tariffs on some of their business, which means they have to pass on at least some of that cost to their customers, unless they were making out like bandits in terms of profit margins, which most are not. So Americans are in fact paying tariffs on American-made goods, only they can't afford to in many cases. So businesses will shed jobs as the amount they can sell shrinks, or they'll go under altogether if they can't afford to sell enough to even stay afloat. You know, you think about specific workers affected. So imports are way more expensive now, and they're about to get even more expensive for the smaller items. Another wave of imports is being hit. So what's the consequence? Well, that means not as many imports coming into America because they're now more expensive, right? Oh, great, Trump says. Only not such good news for dock workers, is it? Less stuff coming in means you don't need as many people to manage those imports, so jobs lost at the docks. That means fewer pay packets in that dock town. That, coupled with the higher cost of everything due to the tariffs, means people locally start cutting back. So what do they start cutting back on? Well, non-essentials. So restaurants get fewer bookings, so they also cut back on staff. Even fewer pay packets. It's a vicious cycle. It's a domino effect, which we saw in my part of the world under Thatcher. It inspired the song Ghost Town. Different cause, but the same economic gravity leading to entire towns losing their economies. Then you think about American manufacturing, which is Trump's big thing, right? Well, steel is now way more expensive. Sounds all right for American steelworks, right? Not so good for the rest of the manufacturing sector. They now have a choice between paying more for foreign steel or paying more for American steel, because even the American steel goes up in price. Two reasons. First of all, if imports are more expensive, they can afford to charge more, and every business will try and charge as much as it can get away with. But secondly, they still have to import the iron ore and things like that, and they're paying tariffs on that. So either way, if you need to buy steel, you're paying more, which means soon your customers are going to be paying more for the finished product. But they don't have the money. American wallets are not fat enough to absorb these extra costs. So those manufacturers will sell fewer units. That means they won't need to produce as much. They don't need as many workers. More jobs lost, and specifically in manufacturing, which Trump claims to be helping. Steel beams for construction are up over 3% this year. So it now costs significantly more to build homes and office blocks. That squeezes household and business budgets further. All of these things have knock-on effects. And because Trump has hit all goods with tariffs, it's like gone across the economy. Those knock-on effects are incredibly complex and chaotic. The very industry Trump claimed to be helping may take the biggest hit. It's a bit like how Brexiteers here in Britain thought they were helping farmers and fishermen. In our post-Brexit Britain, these are some of the angriest producers in the country. Oh, they're furious. Let's see how factory workers are feeling in a year or two. Or maybe I'll have to say former factory workers. It had already been calculated that Trump's tariffs had wiped $2,200 from the average American household's budget this year. And I'm not sure if this latest change was factored in, because it's only coming into force now. We've known about it for a while, but it's only just coming into force now. But Americans will certainly be feeling it. People and businesses will both have to pay more for the essentials. They have no choice, but they will have to do without some non-essentials to manage. Not all of those non-essentials come from overseas. American businesses are going to be losing customers over this. And we know from past analyses that widespread tariff increases always cost you more jobs than they save or create. When Trump applied a much narrower range of tariff boosts in his first term, he lost 6 jobs for every one he created. He did create some, and he focused on them. But for every one he created, there's another 6 lost. And his current tariff regime is way more intense than that. I don't know if the ratio will be different this time, but the scale will be definitely much greater. Though quite how easy to judge the scale is anyone's guess, because when Trump didn't like the latest jobs data, he fired the head of the agency and plans to install a known liar into the role. Trump's response to the consequence of his actions is to present falsified national data. Perhaps he feels this will bolster confidence. It is likely to do the opposite. Investors know how tariffs work, and if they can't trust the official data, they assume things are really bad. That will mean less investment even in companies which could have a sound footing. That will restrict profitable companies from expanding and hiring more people. Ironically, if Trump tries to suppress bad jobs data, he could make it even worse. The more you look at this, the more it feels like a way worse version of Brexit. See, with the actual Brexit that we had, the Tories pushing it tried to lessen the damage to an extent for fear of losing the election, which they did anyway. With Trump, his unique combination of excessive stupidity and feeling that democratic accountability no longer applies to him means he's proceeding without any shackles at all. The only thing which has ever tamed him has been a negative market reaction. But the markets are working on the assumption that Trump will ultimately not do something completely insane because, he always chickens out. But because investors are no longer as jittery because they feel TACO is their safety net, they've ironically removed that safety net. This could get very messy. But let me know what you think in the comments below. And for more content, you could subscribe to the channel or even join for access to streams and behind the scenes updates. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.